Welcome into another edition of Ringside Review. I am Athan Hristodulu, joined alongside, as always, by Matt Colpitts. We have got so much to get into and review today with two events happening this past weekend, and of course, now Monday Night Raw behind us as well. There is no shortage of topics of conversation today. So, Matt, thanks for joining as always. I think we start off with this past weekend's events. Saturday night's main event, we'll start there, and then we'll work our way into Evolution. It was like a weekend of two completely different stories. In my eyes, Saturday night's main event, as it has been the last few times that we've seen the show now, chock full of commercials in places they just don't belong. It's egregious. The formatting of the show feels way too forced with how short time, like how much of actual content time they have to that commercial break time that they're trying to fill out. And then also just like some of the results in the way the night went. Obviously, the Seth Rollins injury, devastating for what they had going on there, coupled with the fact that Gunther and Goldberg's match was a bit of a It was clearly stretched, and it feels like something was supposed to happen to get that match to end sooner, and then ultimately something happened following that would then eventually lead into the Goldberg thank you that they got afterwards. I don't know, but there was clearly something off with the way that match went. And then, I mean, if you want to get into Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre and the Jelly Roll stuff and all of that, I mean, it is what it is. I'm not a fan of it, but it's part of WWE, so that's my overall thought on Saturday night's main event. Do you have anything of any differing opinions as to what I just went over?
No, I mean, I wish I did, but unfortunately, I don't. The whole Jelly Roll, Randy Orton celebrity thing, it just feels very much like this is what WWE is now. I've seen so many clips where like AEW guys are like, we're the best wrestle, we're a wrestling company, and then WWE is just really running with like we're not a wrestling company, we're a sports entertainment company. So they're kind of all in on like the celebrities, the cameos, anything that's gonna do social media clicks, which like I get it from a business standpoint, but as a wrestling fan, yeah, it's pretty tough. The fact that Drew McIntyre or Randy Orton are doing this kind of a program at SummerSlam, it hurts the fan in me. But again, I just understand it, and it feels like just representative of the times. As for Saturday night's main event itself, same deal. Unfortunately, it definitely was much of a letdown, and I do think that Seth Rollins' injury really derailed the remainder of that show, because I feel like maybe he was going to cash in. Maybe that's why Gunther and Goldberg just felt so awkward and long. Like you said, we didn't even get to see Goldberg's retirement speech on air for the most part. And
I actually, funny story about that, when that match ended and they just like cut to commercial, no prompt, I thought it was over. I turned the TV off. I thought they were done.
Yeah, exactly. So something was off. Maybe it was all supposed to lead to Rollins cashing in, holding the title, reminiscent of the heist of the century at WrestleMania. But we didn't get that, and we'll never know if LA Knight was supposed to win the match. We'll never know if Goldberg was supposed to win, get cashed in on. We never will know what outcomes were supposed to happen, which is unfortunate. Best wishes out to Seth. But as we move into Monday Night Raw, we'll talk more about that whole developing story. But yeah, man, unfortunately, Saturday was a tough day to be a WWE fan.
Yeah, definitely tough. I'm kind of in the camp of just get Saturday night's main event off of NBC and get it onto Netflix. Give yourself, as the WWE, the control of the formatting for that show and how you actually want it to be presented. It just feels like NBC is trying way too hard to milk like a nostalgia act from when they were initially doing the Saturday night's main event and cramming down as many commercials down our throats as possible. Because SmackDown doesn't even feel that egregious. It just feels like whatever they're doing on Saturday nights, it makes the show feel way too bloated with commercial time. It feels way too rushed, and you're missing way too much action. On the flip side, though, how about WWE's Evolution the following night? From start to finish, it was all gas, no breaks. I don't want to say I didn't have any expectations for the show. I genuinely was not sure of what we were going to get. There was a lot going on with people coming back from long absences that were going to be performing in big spots. Trish Stratus, obviously, being one example. The Battle Royal, wasn't too sure about the Battle Royal either, but I've got to say, if you wanted to experience women's wrestling at its absolute finest in peak, WWE Evolution checked every single box and then some. I mean, from the women's tag team match that completely floored me, because that format of match alone always feels wonky and awkward, but there was never a moment where I felt what was happening didn't feel fluid and it wasn't being transitioned from one instance to another. Like, beautiful storytelling inside the ring there. Trish Stratus absolutely still has it in the tank, which is crazy to me because it's been so long since she was an actual active in-ring competitor. The crowd even getting behind her as she was going through. Like, her and Tiffany Stratton were unbelievable together. The main event, obviously, from start to finish, Iyo Sky and Rhea Ripley tearing down the house. And then, of course, the ultimate cash-in at the end, which we'll get into in a second here. I want to hear your theory, and we can go back and forth on maybe mine if it's differing. But I cannot gush enough about that event as a whole. And I thought from start to finish, it was an A-plus show.
Yeah, man. And this is where, even if Saturday was tough to be a WWE fan, you were proud to be a WWE fan on Sunday, because as the literal name of the pay-per-view is, PLE is Evolution, it felt like an evolution. We haven't had a show like that. I believe it was 7 years since the first one. So it's just nice to see kind of, the women superstars just have a showcase, and they put on a show. I was most excited for Rhea and Iyo, which is funny because going into that, I was kind of completely anti-Rhea. I was like, how many damn title shots is she going to get? But it ended up being an incredible match leading to the Naomi cash-in. So I love that because you had the shock value. Everybody was expecting Naomi inevitably to cash in on Tiffany Stratton, or if it's going to be Jade Cargill that gets that belt, she would cash in on Jade. But it ends up being a cash in for the Raw title, and now it seems that Naomi is now officially moved over to Raw. So that was good shock value, and something that I've always loved as a wrestling fan, when you just do not expect something to happen and they pull the trigger. And then with that being said, like you said, the rest of the show was incredible. You had Nikki Bella also returning to ring action. She looked pretty much like she hadn't left. Trish Stratus looked incredible. And yeah, that tag match definitely probably stole the show, I would say. And I agree, those multi-tag matches always feel like filler. It's almost like just cram everyone in because you can't fit them in on the show. But that was really good. Same with the Battle Royal. Just a great PLE overall.
Yeah, I cannot gush enough about it from top to bottom. The card was just, again, all gas, no breaks. It was fantastic from top to bottom. The main event, though, something we had kind of been talking about prior to getting on here. Just your thoughts as to, with the cash-in happening and Seth Rollins' injury the night before, you and I previewing the show, we talked predictions, and my whole thing was Seth Rollins loses and then ultimately cashes in later on in the night against Goldberg and Gunther in some capacity, whether it's during or post-match. And we had ourselves Seth Rollins as champion, which would then allow for him to start working towards his build to SummerSlam. Of course, Seth Rollins gets hurt. We don't get a cash-in. We end up getting that exact scenario, but on the women's end instead, with, of course, Jade Cargill going over Naomi and then ultimately cashing in during the main event, making it literally pulling the Seth Rollins version of WrestleMania 31, but for Evolution. She basically did the whole thing. And I think that's a phenomenal callback, but do we feel like that was done because of that injury? Was that the plan all along? Because I love the direction of this. If it was like a last second call, like, hey, we were going to do this with Seth, but we're going to go with you now. We're going to send you to Raw. We're going to move you along. I love, like, Naomi acknowledging the fact that, like, she's moving on from everything that's been happening on SmackDown. She's on Raw now. She's working over there, and it gives her a bunch of new faces to work with for the foreseeable future. But it's crazy to me, and maybe it is just a matter of me being a victim of the moment, to see a scenario I called and basically laid out just play out with a completely different side. Yeah.
And honestly, I know I made the point earlier, but like, I feel like it's one of those things that we just will never know if Seth wasn't to have gotten injured on Saturday. Personally, I feel like I don't think they would have pulled the trigger on 2 cash-ins in the same weekend. I feel like it would have taken away, if Naomi was going to be the Sunday cash-in, it would have taken away that moment a little bit to be like, Seth just cashed in.
Yeah.
Not as exciting. So I think if the plan was for Seth to have won that title and walked away from Saturday with the belt, I don't see Naomi cashing in. I think they would have let Naomi just kind of hang on to the briefcase, stay on SmackDown, etc. But who knows? Maybe it was the plan for 2 cash-ins. Maybe it was the plan that Seth was never going to cash in the first place, and Gunther and Goldberg played out exactly how it was supposed to. It was just awkward in general. But I love it. I love how Naomi went about it. I love that it's just going to be fresh new faces for her. It feels like the Raw division has been strong, but other than the addition of like Stephanie Vaquer and Roxanne Perez, like you kind of need some new feuds and new blood. So I'm excited for that new dynamic where it's not just Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan, the usuals kind of feuding with each other. So I'm excited. I love it, but I guess to answer the question and come full circle, I'm not sure how it would have played out.
So one final question before we get into Monday Night Raw. Do you feel like Evolution should be a yearly event? I saw a lot of discussion post, like, you know, the highs were high following that show, social media buzzing, and everyone, it felt like everyone, if not, it was every other person basically banging the table going, this needs to happen every year. But I saw a lot of people with counter arguments saying, no, it's great that it's being spread out and it only happens every some odd number of years because it makes the event more special. Do you think it should be an every year thing? I think 7 years or whatever the actual number ended up being from the first event to the second event's a little too long. Like an every 3 or 4 years where you give it some more time to really allow the like women's roster to turn over and see some change. I kind of like that aspect of it. Like going back and comparing Evolution 1 to Evolution 2 is a sight to behold because it's two completely different eras with some familiar faces, but it's not the same show by any means. And obviously in large part because you have so much up and coming talent right now.
Yeah, I think I want like a mix, I guess, because I agree it should not be 7 years apart. That's way too long. But I also agree that at the end of the day, you know, if you are a woman in WWE performing, you have so many opportunities in the year with recurring big shows like WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, you name it, to put on a showcase. So I kind of do like having this Evolution a little bit more spread out. Maybe you could shrink it to like every other year, like every 2 years, or like you said, 3 to 4. I like that a little bit more than either extreme where it becomes an annual thing or, you know, almost close to a decade before you see the next one.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those cool shows where it is really just a showcase of like what WWE has literally evolved to, not to keep playing with that PLE title name, but it's just true. Like it really just makes sense that it's an evolution. It's showing a growing industry. And I do think when you look at all other industries and companies in wrestling, WWE is hands down number one when it comes to women's wrestling. They've really just had a whole revolution. And yeah, I would like to see it more, but let's not ruin the spectacle that it is.
Yeah. And I think, especially for me coming out of it, because in the lead up, I had kind of complained I would have loved them to kind of do like a Mae Young Classic that led into Evolution. Yeah. And I felt like I was eating my words the entire night too, because I was like, this ended up being so much better than I could have possibly hoped for or expected. And at this point, I'm not even mad about it. I do still think if you could find a way to do the Mae Young Classic into Evolution, that would be such a great segue into it. But again, top to bottom, that show was fantastic. And like you said, proud day to be a wrestling fan on Sunday night, thankfully, after Saturday's disaster. Obviously, the big thing we got to look at here, though, coming out of the weekend and going into Raw, it got addressed a little bit from Paul Heyman himself in a backstage segment with the rest of the gang. What's next for Seth Rollins? He has the Money in the Bank briefcase. He is clearly hurt. A lot of speculation went on this weekend as to whether it was a work or not, and then ultimately it seems like it's not a work. It is legit, and obviously Seth, with his past history of knee injuries, it's just one of those things that you hate to see, but as Paul Heyman pointed out, he has till next June to cash in that briefcase. There's no real reason to rush him back to really do anything. And we're now in a situation where the two other guys that are a part of this group of Paul Heyman, Seth Rollins, and of course Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, these two guys that were working alongside that were supposed to be more the future behind Seth Rollins, now we're going to get thrusted into the forefront. And it's clear Braun Breaker got a little bit of that on Monday night. Is this one of those things where Seth goes dark, whether he gets the surgery or not? Maybe we don't even find out because they want to keep it so much under wraps so that when his cash-in happens, it just comes out of complete left field. Or is this one of those things where maybe it's not that serious, they're going to keep him off just to kind of milk the injury aspect of it a little bit, and then maybe his cash-in comes in sooner rather than later, like a SummerSlam or maybe like a Clash in Paris or something like that. I like the idea of whatever it takes for him to get back to 100% to prevent something like this from happening again. But I almost want to just hear nothing from Seth. Like I want it to go dark completely. Let Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker try to do their thing under Paul Heyman's direction. And then from there, we just get that eventual pop shock cash in from Seth whenever he's ready to come back.
Yeah, I definitely think the shock factor is in your second scenario, because I just always think back to 2008 John Cena at the Royal Rumble after he destroyed his shoulder and came back like months early, like literal Superman. Shock, that's becomes one of the most iconic WWE moments of all time, and Seth Rollins is no stranger to creating his own iconic moments in the company. So it could be cool if literally, just a few weeks SummerSlam, Seth is there and walks out the champ. That would be a cool shock factor moment, but my gut is saying that this is legit. This weekend has felt, changed, altered, all because it's rotating around Seth Rollins' complete real injury. So I think it's really just gonna go dark, and I feel like that's kind of what yesterday's like set up for, with Paul acknowledging that Seth has a year, he doesn't need a rush, with them just kind of catapulting Braun Breaker into the main event scene, which I do want to break that down as we talk about Raw, because I have my own gripes with that. It just feels very much like they're gonna showcase Breaker and Bronson. It's kind of the next man up mentality for WWE, and then Rollins is just going to come back. Maybe it's Survivor Series, maybe it's not even until 2026, because I think he said he had until June or July to just do a shock value cash in at that point. But I do think this is going to require surgery. He's going to be off, and I don't think they're really going to be acknowledging him other than just Paul hanging onto the briefcase every single week. That's the most Seth Rollins acknowledgement we're probably going to get. But yeah, that's kind of my gut.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how it plays out. It to your point of, it feels like the last 3 days of WWE content from Saturday to Monday, there feels like there was definitely a lot of shifting going on, especially Saturday and Monday, because of the Seth Rollins injury. And again, like, I'm not 100% sold on the idea, but like the Naomi cash in possibly being because it was supposed to be Seth the night before and they went and just threw Naomi into it. Maybe that wasn't the plan all along type thing. Like, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of shifting happening. So I'm interested to see how it goes. It's unfortunate, but again, I love the idea of just Seth going away. And if it's a long-term injury, don't say a word. Let the fans almost forget he even has the briefcase. Let it be one of those things where when he's back, if it ends up being like a 6, 7, 8 month thing where he's coming back, I mean, could you imagine the pop at like WrestleMania next year if that's the return date for him? Let's say it's more serious than we all want it to be, and it ends up being a long-term thing, and he comes back WrestleMania to cash in again. Back to like 2 cash-ins at WrestleMania would be unbelievable for a guy like Seth. So we'll see where it goes. I hope it's quiet, though. Couple other things that came out of Monday night that I do want to go over with you. The women's side of things, as we just talked a lot about it. A lot already got set up for SummerSlam. We've got a triple threat for the Women's World Championship. Naomi, Iyo Sky, Rhea Ripley. That's going to be happening. That basically got announced right off the rip of the show. We also had a really good match between Lyra and Bayley where the crowd is really behind it. And we've had some moments with Lyra and just how the crowd has felt about her over the last couple of months as she's been working through this Becky Lynch and ultimately Bayley included feud that they've kind of had going on the last few weeks. But phenomenal match, great ending. Round number 3, it's essentially just that this is to decide it all, I would assume here. Lyra versus Becky. We'll start with the IC match first. How are we feeling about getting this again? And is there any way that Lyra comes out of this a loser? Because I don't think that they can have her lose. Like, this feels like it ends with a Becky Lynch loss and putting Lyra over.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the story development, I see it. I see what's going on. They are really building Lyra out of this storyline, and that was seemingly the whole purpose of this. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, Bayley and Becky are the 4 horsewomen. I feel like I've been saying that every single week. They've been established, even though people have their own gripes with how Bayley's been treated, with taking L after L after L. Even after, she can come back and just takes another L. So nothing really has been changing with her character. But in terms of, again, the story, I think Lyra has been elevated. I know, at the earlier Ringside reviews that we've done, we were saying that it wasn't really clicking for us. Like, she's just really not moving the needle, but she has genuinely been doing really great character development, growth, and people are starting to buy in on her. Her entrances are getting louder. People are starting to do the woo. So good for her. And yeah, I do see her walking away with the title. But in terms of how I feel about seeing it for the 3rd time now, it's tough. I feel like we're entering another one of those WWE chapters where you're getting the same 3 or 4 feuds every single show, where a few months ago it was like Drew and Punk, Liv and Rhea. Like, it was just the same matches. So I am ready for this chapter of Lyra and Becky to kind of conclude, hopefully at SummerSlam. But I'm sure it's going to be a great match, and we're going to still be captivated by it because they've been surprising us.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what ends up happening with Bayley in this whole situation, because I don't know if I think it was during the match, during commentary, like as I was listening to commentary, it got mentioned that like Bayley hasn't won a match in a long time. I forget the specific time length, but it's like something ridiculous since like she got hurt and took time off like a while ago. So the fact that she's now just the odd man out, back to losing as she kind of got thrusted in, and now she's going to get taken out. Like, I'm curious what the end goal is for Bayley in this whole situation, other than if it really was all about just pushing Lyra. I guess that's the goal. If it is what it is, it seems like it's starting to work. Like you said, the crowd's starting to get loud for Lyra. They're starting to get behind her. We're hearing the woos during the entrance. Like, it all seems to be working, but it just feels... It's weird that we went from Becky Lyra to Becky Lyra Bayley, and now we're just going to go back to Becky Lyra, and Bayley's just kind of on odd man out, sitting at the end of the whole culmination of this feud between the two of them. It just felt like a weird stepping stone. The other thing is, of course, that triple threat for the Women's World Championship. Listen, at this point, it's funny because we're just complaining about how long a feud is and how it kind of feels like it's being rehashed. I mean, we are seeing Rhea and Iyo go at it in some shape or form with somebody else involved for what feels like the 19th time now. But this is a feud that I can't really get enough of. And the wrestling is just, it's superb. And you're adding Naomi now as the champion this time around to this element in this story that's being told between Rhea and Iyo. They can't just take the belt off of Naomi at SummerSlam, right? Like, this has got to be a run for Naomi. She's earned this. And at this point now, I don't think Rhea's ever going to get that one up over Iyo. Unless they're going to save that for some storytelling, like way down the line. It feels like Rhea Ripley is never going to get that win over Iyo Sky.
Yeah, I like that they're really building that fact up. Like, going into Evolution, I don't know how many graphics and times I heard Rhea's never beaten Iyo. Rhea has never beaten Iyo Sky. And then they even showed, like, the 4 or 5 times that they fought and the stats about how Io's always beaten her. So they're really playing into that.
Oh,
and the fact that at Evolution, she also got robbed of that opportunity and then played it up yesterday on Monday Night Raw. I like that. It's always going to be kind of in the back pocket. Like, okay, one day maybe we will see Rhea kind of like, they're trying to build it almost as if it's like an Undertaker WrestleMania streak. Like, we're just waiting for Rhea Ripley to beat Iyo Sky at this point. And to go back on my last point with the feuds lasting forever, yes, I am ready for both Rhea and Iyo to go on to other things, but I would also be lying if I said I'm not excited to see it again because they just have great in-ring chemistry.
It's unbelievable.
And yeah, Evolution was the absolute culmination of it. Naomi is the fresh blood being inserted into it. So I guess I can't really complain when we are seeing some change. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a banger of a match. And I do agree that there's no way. I'd be shocked if Naomi does not walk out the winner.
Oh my, the IWC would probably lose their minds. And also, like, you can't ruin what was such a special moment for Evolution either. I feel like that, and like, you can't take the moment away because it happened, but that's definitely a way to like kind of throw dirt on what was such a great moment in time. So I'm assuming that it ends up being some sort of Rhea and Iyo kind of take themselves out, or maybe like, and somehow Jade Cargill gets involved if that's the story you want to tell. I know that, Naomi kind of said we're done with that, but are you ever really done with that when you and somebody else have that much beef where it's that personal between the two? Like, or who knows, maybe Bianca has something to say about that. Like, we'll see. But I love it. I'm looking forward to it. That's, again, it's a nice lift to what has been a very long rivalry, much longer than the Lyra and Becky thing that we've been watching for a while now. But I'm excited for it, and the wrestling is it's going to be good. Like, the level that Rhea and Iyo have gotten to alone is incredible, and Naomi's fantastic herself. I cannot wait. That's got to be like do you think like potential headline for one of the nights of SummerSlam at this point? Like, I think that there's a real case for it.
Yeah, I mean, prior to the 2-night program and setup, probably not, but with the 2-night
program,
with the
2-night,
I absolutely see this probably main eventing night 1 for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think so. All right, well, last thing we got to get on, and I know you've been itching to talk about this, so the main event, Gauntlet match, CM Punk, of course, going over and winning the Gauntlet match, but Roman Reigns coming to save the day late at the end. This is one of those things where we talked a lot about like the change happening and the ripple effect of Seth Rollins getting hurt. There is a piece of me that feels like Roman coming back was maybe a rushed thing because they needed him to, because with now Seth Rollins being gone, you lose a major attraction on Monday night. And then at that point, you need somebody to fill the space. But you had a pretty good point to me as to why maybe Roman was going to come back regardless, that we talked about prior to doing this. So I'll let you go in on that. But I'll let you take the reins on the match itself. I know you're not thrilled about how it played out and some of the things that happened, so I'll let you fire away.
Okay, so I will touch upon Punk winning, Roman Reigns obviously being the headline of Monday Night Raw. But in terms of the actual gauntlet match itself, so it starts obviously with Penta, Braun. Braun wins. I haven't been too excited with Penta's booking recently. I feel like they started him off strong, and then now it's kind of just fizzled. And I don't know, he's still getting pops, but I just feel like it's getting tainted a little bit because he is taking so many losses. But my real gripe out of this match, 100%, was the third man to enter this gauntlet, LA Knight. I remember heading into Saturday night's main event, I was like, if LA Knight loses to Seth Rollins, I just feel like it's irreparable. Like, he has been robbed of the Money in the Banks. He's been tossed out of Royal Rumbles. He's lost the big ones. Just this past WrestleMania, he lost to Jacob Fatu. He got so organically over, and you see that with so many of those guys that get over, they just get tossed to the side, and you just kind of like almost forced to like fizzle out that popularity. And I don't know, LA Knight once again losing Money in the Bank, and then now beating Seth Rollins clean on Saturday, which we don't know if that was supposed to happen, but it happened because of the injury, only to then lose to Braun Breaker after he already did a match to Penta, and let alone lose clean. That was tough to see. So as an LA Knight fan, I just feel like they're never going to let that man win the title. I'm hoping, I want to be optimistic about it, but it hurt when he just rolled out and then Jey Uso came out. I couldn't even be excited. I was like, man, they did LA Knight nasty. So that's my gripe with that. You know, Jay got protected. He had the Bronson interference, and then Punk goes on to win. You know, before I touch the other stuff, I'm sure you may want to make a quick point.
No,
but,
I mean, you're good. I'll let you roll. I mean, my biggest thing is just that I get where you're coming from. I love the fact that they build Braun Breaker, or they're building Braun Breaker the way they are, is just like an absolute unit and machine. Like, I love it, and them giving him a way out kind of with why he's losing and whatnot and things like I love it. I'm fine with it. It works. I do. What you're saying about LA Knight resonates with me, because I hate seeing people that can get over, like you said, so organically, and then it almost feels like they're too over for their own good, and they get forced into situations where it just gets stepped on. They have to fizzle out, and it is what it is. And LA Knight has stood the test of that time in that situation, and like you said, coming off a clean win against Seth Rollins. Injury obviously needs to be noted in that win, but it's a clean win for him nonetheless. And to have him just go down and lose to Braun Breaker, who already has been through a match technically in this gauntlet match, clean the way he did. It's tough. But I'm a big Braun Breaker guy, and I want him to be that machine. So I stand on the opposite end of unfortunately, LA Knight's making the sacrifice for my guy Braun Breaker there. But yeah, the main event though, just the ending of the show though, with Roman Reigns coming back. I mean, all bets are off at this point. I'm really curious what he's going to do, because you had mentioned earlier to me before we sat down to do this that maybe it was supposed to be him and Seth Rollins and a little bit of a feud. Like, if in the scenario of Seth Rollins cashing in on Saturday night's main event and then ultimately holding the title and Roman Reigns making his return, maybe that being how that direction goes. Was the gauntlet match just a matter of we got to figure something out and put a bunch of likely candidates for the championship opportunity together to decide who's going to face Gunther at SummerSlam kind of deal? What was going to happen there? But now Roman Reigns is back, and I genuinely have no idea what he's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I know I had mentioned it to you prior, but I feel like the setup possibly was going to be a Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. But again, the whole episode we've been referring to the Seth injury. I just feel like it's thrown off so many plans. I want to throw out a prediction. I feel like what they're setting up for is some tag match at SummerSlam. It's going to be Braun and Bronson versus maybe it's Roman and Jay. I feel like that might be the setup. Is that going to get all the impressions and, people excited? To be determined. Depends how they build it. But, yeah, I thought there was a lot of moving parts, with Punk winning. I feel like he could have been an odd man out if Seth Rollins was still around. Because, like, do you repeat the WrestleMania triple threat match and have Punk, Reigns, and Rollins go again at SummerSlam? Was Punk always the plan to face Gunther? But, like, if Rollins cashed in, how was that? Like, I just feel like there were so many scenarios where I didn't know how it was all going to go. So, for Roman, I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's beefing with Braun Breaker, which doesn't, to me, feel like a one-on-one at SummerSlam really moves the needle. Maybe it does after the way they built Braun Breaker this past Monday. But, yeah, my guess is the tag match. We'll see how it goes. But I feel like the OG plan was going to be Seth Rollins.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like the tag team, like, and that almost feels like a step back for Roman, just teaming up with Jay to go up against Bronson and Braun. Like, it's just, you're basically going back to, like, not tribal chief era Roman, but like you're bringing in guys with the bloodline and it's just a tag team match that he's being involved in. I want to see a little bit more of a clear direction for Roman. So I would not be opposed to seeing Braun Breaker and Roman, but then you have the conundrum of, like, do you just squash Braun Breaker's build with a match against Roman that, like, can you really have Roman lose clean to Braun Breaker? Like, how does that work? There's going to have to be interference involved. Like, maybe like if they wanted to do Roman with Jay in his corner, which also kind of like belittles Jay and everything he's built himself into. So I guess the tag team match makes the most sense. But yeah, Roman and Seth main eventing maybe a night at SummerSlam would have been awesome. But obviously you also have the Cody Rhodes and Cena thing going on as well, which we're finally going to see some sort of step forward in, because it's been like 3 weeks since we've seen Cena this Friday. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans itself out. But there's a lot to look forward to right now. And Seth Rollins' injury definitely threw a wrench, I would say, into what WWE's plans were. But I almost kind of like it, because you're sitting here going, where does any of this go? And I don't even know if they know as of like this moment exactly what they want to do. Maybe they're just throwing some ideas together and seeing kind of what sticks, what doesn't. But I like that, because Seth Rollins' group and what they were doing for a while kind of felt a little bit obvious as to what they're doing, dominating factions. Seth's going to be kind of getting over everybody. I mean, they had the clean sweep literally the Monday night going into Saturday night's main event. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But that was a loaded show. We went 35 minutes. It's the longest we've ever sat here talking wrestling. But Matt, as always, it's a pleasure discussing wrestling with you all. And for everyone that's watching, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. We'll see you all next Tuesday for another edition of Ringside Review.